Growing up, Jason Schechterle had one dream: to serve as a Phoenix, Arizona police officer. After 4 years in the Air Force, at the age of 26, Jason achieved his goal to work on the streets of Phoenix as a rookie police officer. Only 14 months into what was supposed to be a lifelong career, Jason's life took an unexpected, tragic turn. On the night of March 26, 2001, a taxi cab traveling at over 100 miles per hour crashed into the rear of Jason's patrol car. Upon impact, Jason's car burst into flames, trapping him inside. Through a series of miraculous and fateful circumstances, Jason survived the crash and the ensuing physical and emotional catastrophe. He suffered severe burns to over 40% of his body, which drastically altered his appearance. He has undergone more than 50 surgeries just to have the ability to accomplish simple daily tasks we often take for granted. Jason's journey chronicles his fight for life, his triumph over tragedy, and the inspiration that enables him to continue to overcome unimaginable adversity. His personal narrative exemplifies that the power of the human spirit can never be underestimated or extinguished. His story is one of life, rebirth, and transformation. Jason represents the human experience at its very best, an ascent from despair to describing himself as the luckiest person alive. Please welcome Police Officer Jason Schechterle, and before he comes out, we're going to direct your attention to a video here on the screen. Thank you.
He should be dead. He should have died right there at the scene.
Phoenix police officer Jason Schechterle's Ford Crown Victoria patrol car was rear-ended by a taxi and burst into flames.
Give me a first alarm medical. Report copy, 30-year-old male, priority 1, Wood, County.
People do not survive when their entire head and upper body is engulfed in flame and smoke. It's just physiologically impossible.
His patrol car exploded into a ball of fire, and somehow he survived.
You know, I got that phone call, got in my car and raced down to the hospital, and when I saw him, I really couldn't even believe what I was looking at. He just had this charred black head. So I took my knuckle right here and I hit his forehead, and it felt like I was hitting this concrete floor. I mean, he's burned through all the layers of the skin, through the fat, through the muscle, down to the bone. And by the grace of God, not only is he alive, he's probably going to live through it, and then what is he going to be left with? A guy or a gal who gives back, not asking for anything, just wants to continuously improve everyone's situation. That, to me, is the definition of a hero.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This on? Thank you very much. Pretty intense video, huh? I'm very blessed. I get to travel all over the country and share this story. I like to think about situations I get myself into. Not too long ago, I went to Cleveland, Ohio. Landed at the airport, called an Uber to get a ride to the hotel. And when the gentleman was loading my luggage into his car, I could tell he was pretty shocked and taken aback by my appearance. So we get in the car, and I guess he couldn't help himself. He turned, he said, "Sir, do you mind if I ask what happened? How'd you get those injuries? Were you in the military or something?" And as I casually buckled my seatbelt, I just smiled. I said, "Buddy, nothing happened. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and after one summer, we all look just like this." He didn't think it was as funny as I did. But anytime you can laugh in the face of your adversity, especially self-deprecating humor, it really goes a long way into getting you through what you need to overcome. I get to share my story with you, Burning Shield. It's based on a book that I have. It's available on Amazon. And when I was coming up with the title of the book, it just made sense to stick to what everybody knows. Most people know me as a former police officer, and it's very obvious the story that I'm going to share with you, that I was involved in a very bad fire. And, you know, for most audiences, and I think even for a lot of you in this audience, those are the two least important parts of this story. My former career and my burn injuries are not what's important. What's important is that life happens to all of us. Every single one of you in here has a story. Every one of you is going through something right now that the person sitting next to you probably has no idea what it is. When you think about all of the things that have tried to take you out, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and here we all are, sitting in this room together. And the story is going to continue, hopefully, only if we're lucky. Lisa said earlier, tomorrow's not promised. And there's a couple examples that put into perspective for me kind of how I view life, view my past, and how I want to get through each of the days of my future. Life boils down to one very simple fact, and that's choices. We make dozens, if not hundreds of choices every day. Usually we don't think too much about them. How often have you made a choice to run back in the house and go to the restroom before a long drive? Forgot your coffee cup on the counter, left your wallet or your purse. You don't know how many times your life has been saved because of a precious few seconds that altered the course of your day from a choice you made. And the two examples that I think about often both happened in the spring and summer of 2018. First one started right here at LaGuardia Airport. Southwest Airlines took off, headed to Dallas Love Field. At 30,000 feet, there was an engine failure. One window was broken. One woman was sucked halfway out the window and died. It was a terrible tragedy. She widowed her husband, left 2 kids behind. But all I could think about was, here's the vice president of Wells Fargo Bank in New Mexico. What took her to that conference in New York? Why did she book that flight to go home? I fly 75,000 miles a year. So I know that when she got on that Southwest flight, she chose that seat. Not thinking much of it, I just want to go home to my family. Some of you may remember what's known as the duck boat tragedy, happened in Missouri. 17 people drowned when this boat sank. 9 people from the same family. An entire family wiped off this earth in an instant. The backstory on that, right before they got on the boat, this family decided to jump out of line real quick and take a picture together on this beautiful scenic lake that they were on. And when they did that, the ticket taker asked them to switch to a different boat. That's the boat that sank. All because they wanted to take a picture together and make a memory. That's how simple and fragile our lives can be. I think for most of us, when you go to bed at night, lay your head down on the pillow, I don't care who you're sleeping next to, you're alone. You're alone with your thoughts. The most dangerous place that we are ever going to be is inside of our own minds, and we're there all the time. And it's okay to let the weight of the world come down on you. At the end of the day, you're not going to think about how perfect life is, how great and wonderful everybody you love and care about has it. You're going to think about your adversity. You're going to think about your challenges. When you wake up every morning, the most inherent desire you should have as a human being is to be inspired. Something move me, something make me feel good. And each and every day it's going to be something different, and certainly going to be different for all of us. I woke up this morning incredibly inspired because I knew I get to come do this. I get to share my story with all of you. When I wake up tomorrow, I don't get to do this, so I have to find something else. And it doesn't have to be big things. I can hear my favorite song on the radio. I can watch my favorite team win a game, see a friendly face I haven't seen in a while. It doesn't even have to be getting to an entire day. Let me just get through the next hour and see what I can see from there. So as I take you through this journey with me, I would encourage you not to get too caught up in exactly what I've gone through. Stay in your own shoes. Gather up all of your adversity and challenges right now, but also your loves, your goals, your dreams for the future. And I think we can all gain a little bit of perspective today. I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. Whoops. Can you put that on? There we go. These are all pictures of me. When I look at this slide, I think about 2 things. Number one, I was not born to do this. Never once growing up did I think someday I'm going to stand in front of a group of people and share a unique story. The other thing I think about is, do you know how bad I'd love to sit down right now and write a letter to any one of these guys? How bad I'd love to say, Jason, here's how life's going to go. Here's what's going to happen. Here's how you can prepare for it. Of course, we don't have that luxury. I had what I consider a storybook childhood. Great parents, older brother and sister, went to good schools, played sports. Nothing I would change about my childhood. When I was 16 years old, my older brother Michael became a Phoenix police officer. And I went on ride-alongs with him, I hung out with his friends, and even at that young age, I thought, that seems like a pretty good job. Maybe I'll do that when I grow up. So I graduated from high school, pretty good at golf at the time, got a college scholarship. About 6 months into my freshman year, I decided to drastically change directions in life. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of the rest of the men in my family and serve in the military. So I joined the United States Air Force. The Air Force has a great sense of humor. They said, here's this kid from Phoenix, Arizona, so why don't we send him to Grand Forks, North Dakota? Coldest place in the continental United States, I promise you. I spent 2 beautiful winters there, spent a year in Korea, spent 6 months at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for the 1994 Haitian refugee crisis. Did my 4 years, honorably discharged, came home. And at 22 years old, I just didn't think I was mature enough or ready to become a police officer. And life has a very quick way of changing on us. I met and married my beautiful wife, Susie. We had a couple of kids, a daughter and a son. And I got a job with Arizona Public Service, one of the 2 main power companies in the valley where I live. I started out at the Palo Verde nuclear plant, and then I got an apprenticeship to be a lineman. And linemen are the guys who work on the overhead and underground power lines. It's an outstanding job. You're outside every day, different locations. You make a really good salary. It's what I thought I would do for the rest of my career. On March 26th, 1999, I came home from work, turned on the 5 o'clock news, and the lead story, Phoenix police officer Mark Atkinson, had just been shot and killed in the line of duty. I can't explain why it was Mark, why it was his critical incident, but that was my aha moment. That was the moment I knew, you do have to be wearing that uniform. You do have to be doing that job. Went the very next day, filled out an application with the city of Phoenix. Took about 3 months to get through the grueling hiring process, but I was blessed and lucky enough to be given the opportunity. Started the academy in September of 1999, was the first graduating class of 2000. Am I hitting the wrong button or something? Yeah. Picture of me the day that I graduated the academy. I was assigned to Central City Precinct, which is exactly what the name implies, just right in the heart of downtown Phoenix. And of course, as you know, when you're a rookie, a new officer, you're going to work the overnight shift, you're going to work weekends. Man, everything that I had dreamt or fantasized about this job, all the fun, romantic things that I had seen growing up, watching on TV. When you do this job with the right honor and humility behind the badge, it truly is the most rewarding career in the world. I could not wait to go to work every day. Did my year on probation. My best friend from the academy, he had been an officer in Ohio, Bowling Green, Ohio, for 6 years. We happened to go to the academy together and wanted to work together. We were the only 2 assigned to Central City Precinct out of our academy class. We were able to transfer squads to better hours, better days off. And I can't begin to tell you how perfect my life was. I was 28 years old. My parents, healthy and happily married. All 4 of my grandparents were alive and married. My brother's still enjoying a successful career in law enforcement. My sister and her husband own a successful sign company in the valley. I've got a growing new family of my own, the job that I'm meant to be doing. 28 years on this earth, I'd never even experienced a death in my family, let alone watch somebody go through a divorce or any real setbacks. I was the least prepared person for what was coming. But that's how life is. Nothing's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, in about 4 hours, here's what's going to happen. Better get ready for it. We have no idea from when or where our adversity is going to strike and what a different path it might put us on. For me, it was on March 26th of 2001. If you're paying attention, 2 years to the day after Mark Atkinson died. The reason I became a police officer, on his anniversary. Went to work that day at 3 in the afternoon. I was supposed to work until 1 o'clock in the morning. We were short-staffed, so our sergeant separated my partner Brian and I so we could cover more of our patrol zone. I remember leaving briefing, and against policy, against procedure, I didn't care. I left Central City Precinct. I drove over to Maryville Precinct to the spot where Mark had been shot. He's got a beautiful memorial marker there. And I spent a few minutes with him, making the sign of the cross, thanking him for his service and sacrifice, thanking him for the opportunity that he had given me to be where I was, doing the job that I'm meant to be doing. Having no idea that in about 8 hours, I was going to come very close to needing that same memorial marker. I still remember every single thing I did, went through, unfortunately the words we use, a quiet, routine day. Went on a couple of minor car accident calls, took a couple of paper report calls. This picture's taken during the daytime for clarity purposes, but the incident that I'm going to describe to you happened very late at night. It's the intersection of 20th Street and Thomas. It's about 5 minutes east of downtown Phoenix. Very busy part of the valley, State Route 51 overpass, Phoenix Children's Hospital, Arizona Heart Institute right there on the corner. So about 11:30 p.m., dispatcher comes on the radio, an emergency call of an unknown trouble. And it wasn't in my area of responsibility, so in one ear and out the other, I paid no attention to it. But the officers in that area were busy at the time, so a few seconds later, she came back on. She said, unknown trouble, found dead body in an apartment with a lot of blood. Sounded like a violent crime been committed. And again, for just a brief few seconds, the call went unanswered. I wasn't doing anything, so I grabbed the radio and I said, I'll head that direction. It's an emergency call. I've got a long ways to travel, so of course I'm running code 3, lights and siren. Got to get there as quick as I can. The blue arrow at the left of the screen is the direction I was traveling, eastbound on Thomas Road. And as I approach the intersection, I've got a red light. So even though I have my lights and siren on, I still have a responsibility to come to a complete stop to make sure that people getting on and off the freeway will yield to my emergency vehicle. What does it take, a second and a half to clear an intersection? Just as I'm going to proceed, my patrol car was struck from behind by a taxi cab. The driver was suffering an epileptic seizure at the time, and according to the investigation, he was doing 115 miles an hour when he ran into me. That's a speed I can't even fathom on a 40-mile-an-hour downtown city street. I never saw the car coming, never felt the impact. I have no memory of the collision, but I was fortunate enough in time to listen to those police and fire dispatch tapes, personally interview everybody on scene, and really put together the exact sequence of events that took place after the impact. My patrol car burst into flames, traveled 270 feet through the intersection, coming to west where that yellow rectangle is, and just to the right of that, you see a red number 5. That's where Phoenix Fire Engine number 5 was sitting the moment I was hit. I can't tell you how many miracles and twists of fate went into putting a fire truck in the exact intersection at the exact moment that I needed them most. For them, they were on their way to the same dead body call that I was going to, but the victim was already deceased, so they weren't in a hurry to get there. 3 of them got on their truck. They waited about 45 seconds, and their rookie firefighter, 22-year-old kid, wasn't joining them. So one of them ran back in the station and found this young man sound asleep in his bunk. He had never heard the alarm. But for those precious few seconds, I'm not standing here sharing this story with you. They were able to turn their truck, drive maybe 50 feet, and go to work for me. Taxi cab did not catch on fire. The driver survived, suffered a severely broken left leg that required surgery and a stay in the hospital. He also had a passenger in the back seat of his taxi. And taxis, like police cars, have that plexiglass divider in the middle for safety. This guy was ejected through that plexiglass, through the front windshield. And at that speed, that violent of a collision, he also survived. The ironic part was when the second responding fire units arrived on scene, they saw a man's body laying about 100 feet away. So, of course, they rushed to his aid. And the first thing they noticed, he was wearing Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail outfit. This guy had just gotten released from jail, called a cab to get a ride home. And then they run into a cop. If you don't think that's funny, you got to loosen up, seriously. My Ford Crown Victoria, very susceptible to rear-end fuel-fed fires. We were ground zero in the valley where I live for these incidents. In the span of 4 years, we lost 2 state troopers, had my accident, lost a Chandler police officer, 33 officers across this country, including a New York State trooper in 2003. I actually testified on the floor of the New York State Senate right after his death. Countless civilians that you'll never hear about, and through a lot of hard work and a lot of advocacy, we finally got these cars to stop being made in 2011, and the fires have come to an end. You don't see them in law enforcement. You still see them in the taxi industry and some other things, but very rarely within law enforcement. I want you to really look at the front windshield, the interior of this car, and try to imagine how intense this fire must have been, how hot it must have felt. Witnesses described the flames were so high, licking the bottom of the freeway overpass. And I never want to lose sight of the human side of all of us and what we do, especially when we're thrust into these situations. It'd be easy for me to just tell you the timeline of what happened. But what these 4 firefighters were able to accomplish. There's a lot of great jokes between cops and firefighters, but when it comes right down to it, it's pretty strong camaraderie. And as first responders, a lot of times, most of the time, you're going to get a few details. You're going to have some seconds or some minutes to prepare for how you're going to approach a scene, reflect on your training. Very rarely does the world actually blow up right in front of your face. And then they see it's a police car. They all have very individual, specific jobs to do. The captain's on the radio giving incident details. The engineer's getting her truck prepped, getting the hoses out. One of the firefighters has to battle the blaze. And the young rookie was given the grim task of getting me out of the car. And as he approached my driver's side window, he turned to his captain. He said, "Captain, this guy's dead." And he broke my window with his axe, and I reached out as if to grab the roof of the car. And he said it scared the hell out of him. But even unconsciously, you're going to do things trying to help yourself. Well, here's this young man wearing his turnout gear, his gloves. He doesn't have a knife. And I'm sitting, trapped in my seatbelt in a burning vehicle. Very quickly, 2 good friends of mine, 2 police officers, they're about a half mile away from the scene. They heard the impact, they saw the fire, and they got there in about 30 seconds, having no idea what they were rolling up on. Then they see it's a police car. I can't imagine the flood of emotions that went through them, thinking, who is in there? That's one of my friends who's dying right now. And as they got out of their car, they heard this firefighter screaming, "I need a knife." So one of the officers ran up and he cut my seatbelt. A driver's side window is not a very big opening. I'm 6'3", weighed a solid 200 pounds at the time. As this firefighter and police officer were trying to pull me out of the driver's side window, my long legged size 13 boots got stuck underneath the steering wheel and dashboard. And this other police officer, wearing just a short sleeve polyester uniform, crawled into the cab of that car, into the fire, to help free my legs. Cops and firefighters have a job to do, but going above and beyond the call of duty is sometimes very difficult. Fight or flight syndrome is very real within all of us. I give them a lot of credit. They won Officers of the Year 2001 for what they did for me that night. From the time I was hit till the time I was out of the car was 90 seconds. I was on fire for maybe 55 seconds, and another miracle, I am 2.5 miles away from what I would argue is the best burn center in the United States, Maricopa County Hospital, and I was on their trauma table in less than 8 minutes. But for the collision, every single thing was going in my favor. I had suffered burns to 43% of my body, my neck, head, and face being the worst. They were 4th degree, which is a term I had never heard. I thought 3rd degree was the worst burns you can have. 4th degree means it's down the last layers of muscle into the bone. My shoulders to my hands were 3rd degree and the tops of my thighs. My chest, my stomach, my back don't have a mark on them because of my bulletproof vest, which I ultimately credit with saving my life. Had my chest been burned anything, like my arms or face, I would have died within just a couple of minutes. Burns are a unique injury. They will keep on burning. So if your chest is burned, it's like putting a brick on top, and then another one, and then another one, until very quickly your lungs simply can't expand, you can't breathe, and you will succumb to that injury. So thankfully, the bulletproof vest is for a lot more than bullets. And outside of the fire and the burns, I had 2 cracked ribs and a mild concussion. That was it. A car doesn't catch on fire, I go home just a few hours after the accident. So I looked like when I arrived at the hospital. To put this into perspective for me, my best friend Brian, he heard the call, car accident, car on fire. He thought we were going to get stuck working traffic control, so let's work together. He's trying to get me on the police computer on my cell phone. I'm not answering. He looks up my unit history, sees I'm in the area responding to a call. It did not take Brian very long to figure out that it was me. Well, he happened to intercept the ambulance on his way to County Hospital. He made a U-turn, he followed it in, he stood at the back as they pulled me off on the gurney, and from 2 feet away, my best friend looked down and he said, "Thank God, that's not Jason." He didn't even recognize me. Took me into the hospital room, started cutting off my uniform, and I had a tattoo on my arm at the time that Brian recognized and identified me with, and then he was faced with a very harsh set of circumstances. There was no time to mourn his own feelings or even to worry about me. He knew he was going to pass away very quickly. But he's the one who had to go wake my wife up in the middle of the night and completely change her life forever, get my parents out of bed, contact all of our friends, try to get him down to the hospital. He did an amazing job, got everybody down there in about an hour. Outside of the hospital staff and Brian, the only person allowed to see me was my priest. Was brought in to give me last rites. The chief of the burn center, chief of trauma, Dr. Dan Crusoe, the gentleman who introduced me on that video, one of the greatest healers and lifesavers this world has ever known. Unfortunately, 5 years ago, Dr. Crusoe lost his own battle to cancer at the young age of 53. He gathered my family around and he said, "Look, I've never seen burns like this to somebody's head and face. Jason is not going to survive. But I have to get him into surgery. I've got to get all of that dead bacteria-filled tissue off of him. And we're going to place him into a medically induced coma." Just knowing the pain and surgeries he's facing, if he is to survive for a couple of days, we'll keep him quiet and pain-free for you. So very quickly, paperwork gets signed, and off we go to surgery. This is a picture from that actual surgery. You could see the bloody mess around my head. Just draw a circle around my collar and erase everything up. The entire physical identity that I'd known for 28 years is just being stripped away minute by minute. Later down the road, when I was able to sit and talk to Dr. Crusoe and ask him questions that I really wanted answers to, wanted to know what he experienced, what he did to save my life. And again, I love the human side of it. I'll never forget, he told me, about 30 minutes into this surgery, I stopped, I made everybody in the room put their tools down. And I said, "Why are we doing this? What's the point? Even if Jason is to survive, what kind of life is he going to have? It'd be very easy just to let him quietly go, pain-free. Why are we doing this?" And he allowed himself that 30 to 45 seconds. And then he grabbed his instruments and he went back to work doing his calling. And the why is something that I will come back to in just a little while. My favorite part of this picture, look at that young nurse at the top center leaning against the wall. Look at her face. She was like, "Hell no, I ain't getting any closer to that." There's no way that poor girl made it as a burn nurse, I promise. So time's going by and I'm continuing to survive. Finally came a time the doctors decided to wake me up. And they had no good news for my family. They said, "Jason is completely blind. He's possibly deaf. If he can hear you, if he can speak, he's not going to be very nice. It's what we see all the time with physically disfiguring injuries. So they weaned me off the medicine. And it's hard to believe, but I woke up as clear-headed as I am right now. I knew right away I was in the hospital. It was just the sound and the smells. Why can't I open my eyes? Why can't I move? I was just at work. 1,000 thoughts were pouring into my mind. And thankfully, it was the middle of the day. I wasn't alone. My wife was in the room with me. I'll never forget how calm and strong her voice was. She told me right away I'd been in a car accident, and knowing I'm a cop and I was just at work, first question I asked was it my fault? She said no, so I felt a little better. I said, well, when was it? It was 3 hours ago. It was last night. I was just at work. And she said it was on March 26th. That's an odd answer to that question. What's today? And she said today is June 12th. 2.5 months in the blink of an eye, gone. Missed my wedding anniversary, missed my son's 3rd birthday. Impossible to get my mind wrapped around what's going on. And then within minutes, she told me that my car had caught on fire. And I stopped her and I said, do not say another word to me. Ever since I was a little kid, the only thing that I've ever been scared of is fire. Might sound silly, but as a child, as an adult, my family and I have never owned or cooked on gas barbecue grills. I don't buy real Christmas trees that dry out at the end of the season. I grew up to be a cop. I went on numerous fire calls. Saw people who were burned and disfigured. I saw people who died in fires. The one thing that I prayed would never happen. And here without warning, I'm being told it did. Knowing it was a car accident, not being able to see myself or feel the pain with all the medication, I thought my legs had been burned, but I was still so devastated by this news that I started down the path of emotions. Not only is it normal for us to go through, but looking back, it's absolutely required. You cannot be told something life-changing, something that you consider tragic, and simply say, okay. None of us are designed with that capability. You have to go on a journey within yourself if you have any hope of coming out the other side. And similar to most, I think, for me, I was crying every single day. I've lost a job that I love. What are my children going to think of me? There were days that people even dared walk into my room. They got yelled at and cussed at. There were days you just don't want to talk. And it went that way for several weeks. But I had a great support system. My wife was still there. I'm still a father. My department was incredible. My biggest fear, my biggest reason for shedding tears every day was because I've lost my job. And on one particular day, again, I'm in complete darkness. A gentleman walks in my room and he introduced himself. He said, Jason, it's Chief Hurt, Chief Harold Hurt. He went on to be the chief of the Houston Police Department after leaving Phoenix. And he just very simply said to me, in one hand, I have your oath of office. In the other hand, I have your badge. And I'm going to leave them on this hospital counter to let you know that you will be a police officer for as long as you choose, not for as long as we choose. You talk about a great example of leadership, and it gave me a chance to exhale a little bit. So about 3 weeks after waking up, I had 2 profound realizations that to this day I am so grateful for. First, centered around the taxi driver. It was learned during the investigation that he had caused 4 other accidents prior to mine. He lied on 2 of his MVD applications, stating he did not have a medical condition. And the one doctor who knew about his epilepsy and tried to take care of him for 6 years leading up to our crash, he would not medicate. So it was no longer an accident in the eyes of the law. He was charged with aggravated assault against a PO, ag assault against his passenger, and he was sitting in jail awaiting trial. But on this night, I knew he wasn't out to hurt a police officer. He certainly wasn't out to hurt Jason. He had made a lot of very bad decisions over a long period of time that got him to that intersection. And I thought that I had made a lot of very good choices over many years of my life that got me to that intersection. And if it wasn't me, he would have made it to the next traffic light. He could have hit a woman with her kids, somebody's grandparents, and they wouldn't have been as lucky as me to have survived. So I chose to think in some small way, you were doing your job. You did protect somebody else who's never going to know it. And to not have to harbor the anger of somebody. So many people in law enforcement have guns pointed at them. They have people trying to hurt them individually. Say, you're not going home tonight. I don't take for granted that I didn't have that to deal with. I was in a car accident. But the other thing I realized, and more importantly than that, is no matter what happens in this life, we have to have some accountability. It would be so easy for me to walk around saying, why me? I was serving my community. I was minding my business at a traffic light. Why me? Those kind of thoughts and words are not going to do me any good. They're certainly not going to do my support system any good. I'm the one who chose to be a police officer. I'm the one who chose to answer up for a call that I had no business answering up for. The way our city's laid out, I could have taken 10 different routes to get to the address I needed to go to, but I chose to drive eastbound on Thomas Road, and I chose to be in that left-hand lane. And that took me back years. If choosing to give up a college golf scholarship to join the military, only spending the required 4 years in the military, postponing becoming a police officer until I was moved to do so by the death of another officer, all those choices over all those years, that's what got me into that fire and into that hospital bed. It wasn't some random, tragic moment in time. And if those things are true, and I strongly believe they are, then every decision I make starting right now is going to take me where I need to go. So that was the night that I decided, I don't know what I can accomplish, but I'm ready to at least put up a fight. Again, this is the end of June. So next day I asked the doctors, when can I go home? And they said, you know, if everything goes right, you're going to be here till Christmas. We need about 6 more months. I'd already been there for 4 months. We need you for about 6 more months. So I did everything they wanted me to do, surgery, therapy, you name it. This picture was taken of me walking out of County Hospital on July 31st. Can you imagine how personally motivating it was to be 6 months ahead of the expert schedule? Now, I'm kind of like a little baby. I'm being fed 12,000 calories a day through a stomach tube. Look how skinny I was. I lost 61 pounds. I'm completely blind. I've lost half my fingers to amputation. I can't talk due to all the skin grafts and surgeries. Basically, just a little baby again. Had to go to a rehabilitation center. They thought I'd be there 3 to 4 months. Turned out I was only there for 3 weeks, and I finally got to go home on August 17th. Now, getting home is when the mental and emotional adversity really got me. For 5 months, I've been laying in a hospital with the professionals surrounding me, taking care of me. I've got my friends, the police department, really the whole community rallied around my family, supporting them. I could just selfishly lay there and think about myself. All of a sudden, I'm at home. Not the husband I used to be. My wife gave up her 12-year career in orthodontics to stay home and take care of me all the time. Certainly not the father I used to be. My 7-year-old daughter, Kylie, understood the severity of what had happened, but as you can imagine, not only intimidated by my appearance, but our lifestyle change. All those months I was gone, her mom was gone visiting me, she was stuck at home with her 3-year-old brother, Zane. Zane would cry and run out of any room I was in. He would openly say, "You're not my dad." I'm assuming there's quite a few fathers in this room right now, and I don't know what your version of rock bottom is, but let me tell you. One of your children cannot acknowledge that you're their parent, the overwhelming guilt that comes with that. I know why I put my name on that application. I've never lost sight of that. It's something I'm so proud of. It's carried me through a lot of dark days. But my children didn't ask for me to go out and get these injuries and change their life the way I did. And also, I'm not the member of society that I used to be. I haven't seen myself, so I'm not really ready to show the public. I can't go back to work outside of sneaking into the side door of therapy, going to and from surgery. I was, by choice, stuck at home. But you got to find something. Every day I was blanketed by the thankfulness that I was still alive. Just to listen to the sound of my children's voices, to put my hand on my favorite golden retriever. I'm a huge baseball fan. And in the fall of '01, my Arizona Diamondbacks were on their journey to winning the World Series against this little team not too far from here. And I could listen to a game for 3 minutes or an hour, and bridge the gap to the next hour or the next day. Every time I went to therapy and came home, I got a little bit stronger. Every time I had surgery, something got a little bit better. And the beautiful thing about positive momentum, you just got to get out of the way. Once it starts going, it's an unstoppable force. Now, both the most difficult part of this journey and the most beautiful blessing was my blindness. On the difficult side, to be plunged into complete darkness at 28 years old was without a doubt the most claustrophobic, terrifying thing I've ever experienced. But had I been handed a mirror on June 12th when I woke up and been able to see myself, I don't know that I would have mentally ever recovered from that. I needed that time to ask different questions to different people and try to at least mentally put back together the thousands of shattered pieces of my own puzzle. And the reason for my blindness was my corneas were very damaged by the heat and fire, so doctors covered my eyes with skin grafts. Well, about 9 months after the accident, they decided to open those skin grafts to take a look at my eyes. I'll never forget waking up from that surgery. It's kind of like being underwater and looking at the other end of the pool. That's how blurry it was. But just to see light and colors again was such a blessing. I knew I was going to be okay after that. And most importantly, I could finally get in front of a mirror and see what everybody else had been seeing. I could finally understand what Jason looks like. And I get to choose now what I want to work on. What do I want to make better? And the one thing that drove me crazy was I had no nose and no ears. So in the summer of '02, I am traveling to and from Fairfax Nova Hospital in Virginia. See a wonderful plastic surgeon there. And while I'm there, I meet a guy named Robert Barron. Mr. Barron was the senior disguise specialist for the CIA. And he said, "Hey, Jason, as a hobby out of my basement, I like to help people like you." I was a little skeptical. But you go through something like this, you got a pretty open mind. And I met several of his patients, a woman who had lost an eye to cancer. Her prosthetic eye was perfect, you couldn't even tell. Met a little boy born without an ear. Mr. Barron made him an ear so he could go to school and not be made fun of. I met a woman who was burned in the Pentagon on 9/11. So on one of my trips, I took my buddy Brian with me to be the model for these ears and nose. Mr. Barron made me these prosthetics, and they were perfect. But two problems. Number one, they're too perfect. They don't match the rest of the scars that I carry on my head and face. But also, you have to put these on with a prosthetic glue. Well, I live in Phoenix, Arizona. So in July, when it's 112, after about 3 hours, the glue will break down and one of your ears falls off. Children just simply don't like that. I seriously wore them twice. They've been in my garage ever since. And every time I walk by them, I just smile and chuckle to myself like, "Jason, what in the world were you thinking?" January 13th of '02, the Olympic torch was passing through the valley where I live on its way to Salt Lake City for the Winter Olympics. And I got a call asking me to participate in the torch run. And at first I was incredibly nervous. How am I going to do this? I'm 6'3", weighed maybe 120 pounds at the time. I was so frail and sick. Still couldn't really see, hadn't started all the reconstructive surgery and therapy on my deformed hands. But the Olympic torch comes to the United States once every 20 or 30 years. What an amazing honor. And what an amazing way to honor all of those people who went before me, all those officers who did not have a fire truck in the intersection and deserved just as much opportunity as I had to go home to my family. To honor all of them, it was an easy yes. So I get down there, and this young girl from the Olympic Committee, she's probably 19 years old, she comes up and she said, "Officer Schechterle, we have a wheelchair for you, and we got a guy who's going to carry the torch for you." you carry it for 400 yards. And I said, you know, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I'd really like to carry the torch myself and just try and walk down the street. And as sweet as she could, she looked at me and she said, okay, but when you're carrying the torch, make sure you don't get the flame too close to your face. And I said, no shit. How am I the one guy that needs those instructions? As you can imagine, I did not have much to smile or laugh about for those 10 months. But I went back over to my friends, and I said, you are not going to believe what this girl just said to me. And we were doubled over in the middle of the street laughing as hard as we could. You know, I hate when somebody says something's a cliche. Cliches exist because they're powerful and they mean something to us. Laughter is the best medicine. Nothing's going to make you feel instantly the way smiling or laughing does. And I continue to find humor in almost every situation. It turned out to be a magical night. I was actually able to jog very slowly down the street, past the flame off to Kurt Schilling. He was the MVP of the World Series just a couple months before that. I've got the torch hanging on my wall at home. Another one of my favorite days, without a doubt, in the state of Arizona, the most charitable organization we have is the Arizona Diamondbacks, especially when it comes to first responders. It's amazing what they will do for our families. And on this particular day, they gave us the largest suite at Chase Field, holds 70 people. And then they filled that suite with all my doctors, nurses, therapists, firefighters, everybody who'd been on my team. It was a very small way to say thank you and get everybody in the same room together. Well, then they asked me to throw out the first pitch. This is all my right hand does. I can't open it. I can't close it. 2 weeks prior to this, I had my right index finger voluntarily amputated. I was still recovering from that. But again, how often do you get to throw out the first pitch at a major league game? And it was fun to see things come full circle. My daughter Kylie had thrown out the first pitch the year before when I was in a coma. So I was going to take my grandfather from a small town in Alabama, never seen anything quite like being on a major league baseball field. And I'm pretty nervous. So I'm walking out of the suite, and there's my friends from the department pulled me to the side, and they said, Jason, don't throw this underhanded. It better not hit the dirt. Don't embarrass us. So I get down there, and Kurt Schilling comes up. He says, hey, I'm going to catch this for you. Another huge honor. Superstars don't catch ceremonial first pitches, and I don't know the rituals before games, and I like to make the most of my opportunities. I said, can I stand on the mound? And he said, well, you know, most people want to stand on the flat part in front of the mound and get closer, but you can stand wherever you want. Don't short hop me because I'm not wearing a cup today. I had tunnel vision like I've never had. 40,000 people in the stands. I didn't hear a sound. I'm just praying, God, please throw this ball to his glove. I threw it as hard as I could. It reached his glove. He ran out and we hugged. And even more than the torch run, I was really on cloud nine to go back to the suite to see my doctors and therapists' faces. Throwing a ball 60 feet 6 inches was a huge accomplishment. And of course, the first people I saw were my friends. They said, that was 3 feet outside. You suck. Those stories are a lot of fun to share, and as you can imagine, provided me with a lot of much-needed inspiration, some great memories. It's very humbling to know I only got to do those things because of the job that I was doing, the uniform that I was wearing. And while I greatly appreciate how our communities will rally around first responders in their time of need, like I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day when I laid my head down the pillow and I was alone with my thoughts, do you think I cared anything about throwing a ball or carrying a torch? Not at all. I cared about my family and I cared about my career. Those are the two things I went back to work on. First was our family. We had a daughter and a son, and we were very blessed. But you go through something like this, and it's true when they say you will appreciate life just a little bit differently. So we decided to try and expand our family, bring another life into this world. We were very blessed on October 29th of 2002 with the birth of our third child, Mason Bryan, so much more than the picture of a baby. Not only does it speak volumes to the strength that my wife has in overcoming her part of this adversity, but to get him home from the hospital, to see that he has a life now, made all the pain and suffering I was going through completely worth it. And I finally got the perspective that I needed. I finally got to go back to Dr. Crusoe and say, you remember when you asked why? It wasn't about getting me out of a car. It wasn't about getting me through 1 or 2 surgeries. This is an entire life that shouldn't even exist. What if Mason grows up and has 3 or 4 children? What if they grow up and have 3 or 4 children? Something that a lot of people consider horrible and tragic can have nothing but a positive ripple effect for generations with no logical end. Of course, they turn into this. He is quite the young man now. He will be 20 years old this month. He's playing college baseball in Charlotte, North Carolina. I flew here from there yesterday. I was with him on Sunday. He had a doubleheader scrimmage game, which was just awesome to see, and he lives his life with a very humble appreciation, and it's beautiful. Every time I see him, I still think about those same things. You shouldn't even be here, and it was all worth it. If you're patient in your grief, if you're patient in your struggle, the why is always going to be revealed, and most times it's going to be revealed in a very positive, beautiful way. Outside of Mason being born, easily the best day of my life. November 12th, 2002, 18 months after the accident. I got into a truck by myself and I drove back to work. I started out as a public information officer with the city of Phoenix, and I had become detective certified prior to my accident. And my only goal, my only dream, was to someday in my career be a homicide detective. To speak for victims who can't speak for themselves, to work with families affected by that kind of violence is an honor that I have yet to find a way to express in words. And I had an incredible chain of command. Sergeant, lieutenant, commander, assistant chief, you name it. They allowed me to join the homicide unit, not to be a case-carrying detective. I didn't have the skill set for that, but I could listen to jail tapes. I could run to court and get a subpoena signed, free up the time of our senior detectives. But then they gave me a lot of opportunities to go to schools in and out of state, a lot of on-the-job training. And I worked my way up to where I was the scene investigator for our squad. And as all of you know, the scene investigator has a very important job with evidence collection, the report writing, respectfully taking care of the victims' bodies, attending autopsies, testifying in court. And it went a long way in my recovery process to be doing a job that was so much bigger than me. And I was down to really 2 issues. Number one was my gun. I'm a cop. I get dressed every day. I put a badge on my belt. I want to carry my gun. Well, I was down at the academy 3 or 4 days a week. I'm working with the SWAT team, modifying guns, changing guns. And I got to where I could load and unload that small .38 revolver, and I could shoot and hit the target every time. With these hands and this eyesight, I was so proud of that. But I couldn't do it in the time that's required by the state board that certifies us. And there's some very good reasons why those time requirements are in place. So reality started to set in that I wouldn't get off light duty and do the job the way I wanted to. And the other thing was my eyesight. Doctors took me from 100% darkness to where I'm driving to and from work. I'm reading and writing reports on a computer screen. I'm investigating detailed murder scenes. And I was really taking that beautiful second chance for granted with the hours that I was keeping. So while it was a very difficult decision, 5.5 years after the accident, in August of 2006, I did decide to retire and walk away from the career that I love. And I have absolutely no regrets. I still stay very involved. I teach at our academy and try to be the best ambassador I can for law enforcement. But for my health, for my family's best interest, it was a good thing for me to leave the full-time part of it. And again, I have absolutely no regrets over it. I mentioned to you earlier I was pretty good at golf. Even at the time of the accident, I was a 2 handicap. I mean, I could really play this game, and I loved it. This is the one thing that I threw overboard, the one thing that I used the word can't. Jason, you will never hold on to a skinny little golf club and see a ball flying through the blue sky. Around the time I retired, I was able to start working at it again. And look, I don't care if we're talking about something as catastrophic as 4th-degree burns or something as silly and simple as a game of golf. There is nothing as powerful as a made-up mind. If you believe in yourself, you work toward doing something, you're surrounded by people who will love and support you, there's no end to what you can accomplish. I am so proud to tell you, I got my handicap back down to a 1. I play golf better after the accident than I could before, and it's something that I still very much love to do. My favorite picture of my wife Susie and I, Christmas before the accident. This is another one of those pictures all I think about is, man, I would love to write a letter to that couple. I don't think anybody would argue with me when I say the most difficult thing we'll ever do in life is marriage. You throw in a little bit of life-changing adversity, it gets a whole lot harder. I'm very proud of her after giving up her portion of life and really dedicating it to just us. About 12 years ago, she found her new calling, went back to school, got a teaching degree, and she is currently the 4th grade teacher at the elementary school that our children attended and paying it forward to our future generation. I told you earlier I travel all over the country, and as you can imagine, when I go into airports or I'm sitting alone in a restaurant eating, people are looking at me, and I can only imagine what they're thinking. You know, oh, that must be terrible. His life must be really difficult. And I'm able to smile and think, if you only knew how perfect my life was. But the majority of my health and happiness today is right here in this picture. Nothing means more to me than being a dad. It was a big part of why I challenged myself to overcome what I was going through, why I understood my first leadership role. It wasn't a fight that I wanted to be in. It certainly wasn't a role or a mission that I ever thought I'd play a part in, but I owed it to my children to at least fight. And my daughter, I'm so proud of her for everything that she went through growing up. She was only 7 years old, but she knew growing up, I just want to help other kids affected by the same kind of trauma that my dad went through. She went to Texas Christian University, then on to Baylor University, got her doctorate, and she is currently a child psychologist at the University of Texas at Tyler Teaching Hospital. In January of 2018, I got to walk her down the aisle. Let me tell you, I hope some of you have done that. I hope others in here have daughters and you get to do that, because I promise you, it is the single greatest thing you'll ever experience to walk your daughter down the aisle. And it made every step I had taken from March 26th of 01 to get to that date well worth it. And more important than either one of those things, a year ago July, Kylie gave birth to her first son and made me a grandpa. And it's true what they say, that you have unconditional love for your children. Wait till you look into the eyes of your first grandchild. I mean, it absolutely makes all the bad fade away. My son Zane on the left, that's the child who didn't recognize me. He grew up with a tremendous amount of adversity, a severe eating disorder, social anxiety so bad he couldn't even be out in public. We weren't sure how we were going to get him through high school, let alone out into the world to be a productive member of society. He ended up going to Northern Arizona University, about 2 hours north of our home. They are known for their hotel management program. So he tried it, he fell in love with it, graduated in 2020, and he was hired by Hyatt. And the kid who could not eat, the kid who could not go out in public moved, lived, and worked alone in Times Square, Manhattan. That is the single biggest inspiration of my life, is that young man. And I'm very proud that about 4 months ago, he began a job as an assistant manager at the Hyatt Regency in Scottsdale, Arizona. So he's back in Arizona with me. And as you can see, the baby, he just outgrew everybody. And like I said, all he's worried about is his next baseball game. Life truly is 10% what happens to us, and it's 90% how we react to it. There are not a lot of things we're in control of in this life, very few things. But we're in control of our attitude. Every single day, every situation we face, every person we deal with, we get to choose how we're going to react and respond. And you won't always win those battles. I just got through telling you a little while ago that I cried every single day. I yelled and cussed at people who were there to love and support me. You can't always be the strong, successful person you want to be. But the key to that is it's okay to not be okay. None of us want to feel vulnerability, and we certainly don't want to use the word. But I promise you there's no more beauty or strength to be found than inside of vulnerability. Letting people fight for you when you can't fight for yourself. The one thing that we are created equal on is our human spirit. It doesn't matter how you were raised, your age, your race, your gender, how much money you have in the bank. Our human spirit is completely equal, and it's designed for one thing, to take you away from risk and straight toward reward. You just have to let it fly. I could not control what that taxi driver was doing. I couldn't make his decisions for him, couldn't steer that car in a different direction. And because of that, my entire life, my career, my appearance forever changed. Should I have just given up after that? No. My face and my hands were burned. My heart wasn't. My face and my hands are disfigured. My soul isn't. My character isn't. My eyes and my hands give me 30% what they used to. It doesn't mean my effort is only going to be 30%. We are going to see and suffer a lot of adversity and tragedies only if we're lucky enough to live a nice long life. But this life is so short and so precious and so worth living. So when you go home tonight and you put your head down on the pillow and you're thinking about your adversity, above anything else, please remember, don't let the pain of today blind you from the promise of tomorrow. It can and always will get better. All of your whys that you've ever asked will be revealed, and they will be positive if you give yourself the time and have the patience to get through whatever you're going through. As I stand here today, I would not trade places with anybody in this world. I wouldn't change a single day of my life. I am the most blessed, lucky person in the world, and I live my life full of gratitude every single day. People ask, how many times have you heard, what's the secret to life? There is no secret to life. Yeah, there is. And it's very simple. Wake up every day and simply make a decision that I'm going to leave today better than I found it. I'm going to leave my next meeting, my next phone call. I'm going to smile at somebody at the gas station. I'm going to put an extra shopping cart away. And at the end of the day, when you can say, yes, I left today better than I found it, you will actually feel and see a positive shift in your life that makes it so much easier to get through those days. Thank you all very much for letting me share the story. I think we have time for a couple of questions, but in the meantime, be safe and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Anyone like to ask a question?
Everybody shy?
Hang on one second.
Thank you for your message. Very beautiful, to a different level, but same idea as Rohan Murphy yesterday. It just amazes me when people are dealt a particular hand where it's so easy to say, why me? And often would probably have the idea to throw in the towel, that someone like yourself is just a slap in the face to that idea. You're definitely very positive and very enlightening, and I'm going to bring that message home to my kids, especially that last quote that you had up there, because in today's world with anxiety and a lot of reason to say, why me, and feel like the world's closing in on you, you're just a beautiful example, your message and your story.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you very much. The lights are bright.
How you doing? I just want to say God bless you. You're here for a reason. The Almighty God had a plan for you, or has a plan for you. And the quote that I'm going to take away from this is to let your spirit fly, because it's meant to survive any ordeal. That's the main takeaway I took from it. I just want to tell you, sir, God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else have a question? I think that. Good?
Good?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.